the re-election of President Hayes. So they considered, believe it or not, former President Grant, and they also considered James G. Blaine, who was the Republican leader of the half-breeds. Now, to be honest with you, neither one of those that they were thinking about got anybody too excited, didn't arouse much enthusiasm. So what the Republicans did, and this happens sometimes, you ever heard of Jimmy Carter, President Carter, peanut farmer from Georgia, governor of Georgia? He was kind of a dark horse candidate in 1976. He came out of nowhere. Well, the man that came out of nowhere in 1800, because nobody liked the idea of Grant or Blaine, was a senator from Ohio by the name of James Garfield. He becomes the dark horse candidate, and he's picked by the Republican Party to be their presidential candidate. Nobody really knew much about him. He was the dark horse candidate. He came out of nowhere. Now, the man that they chose to run with him was a stalwart by the name of Chester A. Arthur. And normally when we tell you who the vice presidential running mate is for the president, what's going to happen? From this point on, we're going to have a change on assassination. So because of their differences between Grant and Blaine, the Republican Party picked a dark horse candidate, Ohio Senator James Garfield, and they chose a stalwart by the name of Chester A. Arthur as his running mate for the vice presidency. Now the Democrats, keep in mind, have lost the last 3 elections. So they haven't had much success in presidential elections. Guess who they picked as their candidate? Civil War veteran Winfield Hancock. Now don't get him confused with Winfield Scott. Remember, he was a Civil War general. So the Democrats, who lost the last 3 elections, went all the way back and chose the Civil War veteran as their nominee, Winfield Hancock. Now this was a very close election in both the popular vote and the Electoral College. Very close. There were 9,100,000 votes cast in this election. 9,100,000 popular votes. Garfield wins by 39,000 is all, which is a percentage of 0.004. 4/100ths of 1%. Pretty close election. So out of 91 million votes cast in the popular side of things, Garfield wins by 39,000 or 4/100ths of a percent. Now again, we understand that what counts, the electoral votes. Garfield wins 214 to Hancock's 155, which is enough to become the 20th President of the United States. So Garfield wins 214 to 55 to become the nation's 20th President. And we'll finish the day by telling you a little bit about James Garfield. From birth to death. I won't get through it all today, but we'll get through some of it. So, profile of President James Garfield. What's that? Okay. James A. Garfield was actually born in Orange, Ohio on November 19, 1831. He was born in Orange, Ohio on November 19, 1831. And he was the youngest of 5 children. His parents were Eastern pioneers. James Garfield was the youngest of 5 children and his parents were Eastern pioneers. And Garfield's father actually died when he was just 2 years old, so he really did not know his father well. So he's the youngest of 5 children, born to parents that were Eastern pioneers, and Garfield's father died when he was just 2, so he did not know his father at all. Well, when Garfield was a teenager, his cousin hired him to drive a team of horses that towed a barge along the Ohio River. And that's in Ohio. So when Garfield was in his teens, a teenager, his cousin hired him to drive a team of horses that towed a barge along the Ohio River. You know how that works? Where's the barge? Is the barge in the water? Where's the horses? On land. So they're just towing them down the bank. Well, he worked for a short period of time for his cousin, and he had to return home because he had contracted malaria. He was very, very ill with malaria. M-A-L-A-R-I-A. So after working for a short period of time for his cousin, he was forced to return home very ill with malaria. Well, he recovered, and he enrolled in what was called the Western Reserve Institute, which is now known as Hiram College. So after his recovery, finished school and enrolled in the Western Reserve Institute, now known as Hiram College. Well, he attended Hiram College for 3 years, and then he transferred to Williams College, which is located in Williamstown, Massachusetts. And he went there 2 more years. So after his recovery from malaria, he enrolled in the Western Reserve Institute, now known as Hiram College. And he attended Hiram College for 3 years, and then transferred to Williams College in Williamstown, Massachusetts. And he went to college there for 2 more years. Kind of interesting. He graduates from Williams College in 1856, and he returns to Hiram College as what? What's he doing at Hiram College after he graduates from Williams College? What's he doing at Hiram College?
Teaching.
He's a professor, and he's teaching ancient languages and literature. So after his graduations from Williams College in 1856, Garfield returned back to Hiram College, and he served as a professor of ancient languages and literature. Now this is kind of interesting. He taught there 1 year, and at the age of 26 he was promoted from professor to what do you think of the college? What? Higher. The president. He became the president. I mean, that's a quick turnaround. They must have been impressed with him. So after teaching 1 year ancient languages and literature in 1857, at the age of just 26 years old, he is hired as president of Hiram College. Well, on November 11 of 1858, he married Lucretia Randolph, who was the daughter of an Ohio farmer. So on November 11th, 1858, he married Lucretia Randolph, who was the daughter of an Ohio farmer. And they had 7 children. This is kind of interesting. He had 2 sons that were pretty successful, I mean publicly. One of his sons, his name was Harry, he became president not of Hiram College, but of Williams College, which is kind of interesting. So he had one son, Harry, of the 7 children they had, who actually became president of Williams College. His older son, James Jr., served as Secretary of the Interior under President Theodore Roosevelt. So it's kind of interesting how those sons has one. So his oldest son, James Jr., served as Secretary of the Interior under President Theodore Roosevelt. Anybody know who the Secretary of the Interior is right now? Okay, he was a Montana congressman. He got appointed, which is a big deal. Ryan Zinke. Now, Montana's having a big election now to replace him. And you got a real big money guy that's never lived in Montana that's trying to buy the election. And you have a kind of a country boy that's running that's a musician. a very good singer, but who went bankrupt 2 or 3 times, so they're holding, I mean, just polar opposites of these guys running for office. But Ryan Zinke, who was a congressman from Montana, is your Secretary of the Interior. Well, James Garfield Jr. served as Secretary of the Interior under President Theodore Roosevelt. Well, Garfield served in the Civil War, and he was under the command of William Rosecrans, if you can remember that. He was a general that fought, we talked about battles there. So James Garfield served in the Civil War. He was placed under the command of General William Rosecrans. And he really did well in the Civil War, and he left the military with the rank of Major General. So James Garfield did well in the Civil War and left with the rank of Major General. Okay, we'll finish this today. We'll tell you about he entered politics. Here's some of the positions he served in prior to being president. Okay? He served in the House of Representatives. He also served in the Ohio State Senate. Right? So he was a member of the House and a member of the Senate. Now the thing about these, he was elected to the House and Senate, last one in 1862, so what was going on when he was elected? Civil War. Even though he was serving in the Army, he still was elected to those positions. Very popular man. Now he was re-elected to the House 8 times. And do you remember the impeachment trial of Andrew Johnson? When Senator Edmund Ross made that deciding vote of not guilty? Remember that? When Garfield was a senator, how do you think he voted for the impeachment of Andrew Johnson? He voted guilty. His vote was guilty. He voted to impeach Andrew Johnson. So he won re-election to the House 8 times, and during the time he spent in the Senate, he voted guilty in the impeachment trial of President Andrew Johnson. And the last thing I'll tell you today is after he was elected president in 1880, he fought very hard against the stalwarts, which is kind of interesting because what was his vice presidential running mate who ended up becoming vice president, Chester A. Arthur? He was a stalwart. So he actually fought against the beliefs of his vice president during the time he was president. And that'll come back to make sense here in a bit. He also fought against the spoils system of government. And we'll end with that, and I want to have a little discussion there. So if he fought against the spoils system of government, who was the inventor of the spoils system of government? You remember? What's that? Andrew Jackson. Remember, to the victor belong the spoils, where he put people in his cabinet that necessarily weren't very good but were loyal. Garfield hated that, and he fought his entire presidency till his death on getting rid of the spoils system of government. And he also fought against the stalwarts. Okay? We'll tell you about his future and lack thereof tomorrow. Okay?